This parable will teach you to value what you have. Introduction. Have you ever stopped to think that maybe you're asking for the wrong thing? While millions of people cry out for greater miracles, for extraordinary blessings, for supernatural signs in the heavens, Jesus looks at them and sees something disturbing. They are trampling on treasures they already have in their hands. It's like that guy who begs for a new car while letting the one he has rot in the garage without maintenance. And here is the truth that will bother many people. Maybe the problem isn't that God isn't listening to you, but that you're not seeing what He's already placed in front of you. When God speaks to the heart through Jesus' parables, He isn't just telling cute little stories to pass the time. He is revealing spiritual laws that define who prospers and who withers in life. And today you're going to discover one of these laws, one of the most powerful and, at the same time, one of the most ignored. This parable we're going to explore today is forbidden in many churches. Not officially, of course, but in practice, yes. Why? Because it completely destroys that theology of comfort, that idea that you just need to sit, cross your arms, and wait for God to do everything while you don't lift a finger. Jesus told this story to shock, to disturb, to wake up people who were sleepwalking, thinking they were doing everything right, and the ending is so disturbing that many prefer not to even talk about it. One faithful servant is promoted, another faithful servant is also promoted, but the third loses everything, and the Bible makes it clear that he didn't lose for being evil in the traditional sense. He lost for something you probably do every day without realizing it. God sustained me until here was so you could waste the rest of the journey making exactly the mistake that this servant made. Now pay attention, because here comes the twist that no one told you about. According to Jesus, there is a category of people who are worse than those who make bad choices in life. Worse than those who err, worse than those who fail, worse than those who try and don't succeed. They are the people who do nothing. People who receive gifts, talents, opportunities, resources, and simply leave everything standing still, untouched, unused. And what does Jesus say about these people? He calls them wicked and slothful servants. Not fearful, not too careful, not prudent, wicked and slothful. This should make you pause and ask, wait, how many things do I have standing still in my life that God expects me to You are not alone. God is with you, but being with you doesn't mean doing things for you. And this distinction is what separates those who live a life of purpose and fulfillment from those who arrive at the end of life full of regrets, like I could have been. But here's the good news, the news that can change your life today. It doesn't matter how much you think you have or failed to have. It doesn't matter how many opportunities you've wasted. Until now, it doesn't matter how much time you've spent with your talents buried. From the moment you understand what Jesus is teaching in this parable and decide to act differently, everything can change. Faith in Jesus Christ is not about being perfect from the beginning. It's about being willing to learn, grow, and apply. And this parable specifically, it contains the secret of why some people with so little achieve so much, while others with so much end up with so little. It's the difference between building an empire, starting with 100 reais, or losing an inheritance of millions. Between transforming a simple gift into a brilliant career, or wasting an extraordinary talent in mediocrity. Between living a life that matters, or just taking up space, waiting for death to come. So if you ready to discover what the secret test is that God applies to you every day without you knowing, if you want to understand why your requests seem not to be answered while other people prosper apparently effortlessly, if you're tired of seeing your life spin in the same place year after year, then you're in the right place. God saw your pain. He knows your struggles. He knows about your sleepless night, your hidden tears, your postponed dreams. But now He wants to show you something that may be hard to swallow, but that is absolutely necessary. Maybe the reason you not where you want to be is onto lack of more blessings, but lack of responsibility with the ones you already have. When everything seemed lost is exactly when this truth needs to reach you, because it's in moments of crisis that we are most open to real changes. God heard your prayer, asking for direction, asking for wisdom, asking for a way out, and this parable may be the answer you didn't know you were looking for. Prepare your heart, open your mind, and let us dive together into this story that Jesus told more than 2,000 years ago, but that could have been written thinking specifically about you, your situation, your choices today. The expectation of something greater while despising what you already have. You know that feeling of always waiting for something grand to happen in life, while the days go by and it seems like nothing changes. Many people live like this, with their eyes fixed on a distant horizon, dreaming of the perfect miracle, the ideal answer that will solve everything at once. It's as if real life, the one happening right now, were just a waiting room for what really matters. But here's the truth that few stop to understand. While you wait for the extraordinary, you might be trampling on the extraordinary that's already in your hands. When God speaks to the heart, He often doesn't shout about the distant future, but whispers about the neglected present. It's like that guy who dreams of having a billion-dollar company, but can't even properly take care of the small business he already has. Or that person who asks for a perfect relationship, but doesn't value the true friendships that surround them. Life has these ironies, we ask for more, but don't take care of the little. And then we get stuck in that infinite loop of dissatisfaction, always thinking that happiness is in the next conquest, the next level, the next blessing. The issue is that there's an invisible trap in all this, a trap that captures millions of people without them realizing it. This trap has a name: ingratitude disguised as ambition. We're not talking about that obvious ingratitude, that rude guy who doesn't thank for anything. No, this one is more subtle, more dangerous. It's the one that wears the costume of big dreams, audacious goals, faith that moves mountains. On the outside, it even seems spiritual, right? I'm believing for something greater. But inside, there's a silent contempt for what already exists. It's like someone who gets a guitar as a gift and, instead of learning to play, leaves it gathering dust in the corner of the room because they're waiting to get a grand piano. Does that make sense to you? Of course not. But that's exactly how many people treat God's gifts. You are not alone. God is with you, even when you don't recognize His presence in the small things. He's there in the health you have and don't celebrate, in the job you complain about, but that pays your bills. In the family you criticize, but that's by your side. Let's be practical here, because theory without practice is just nice talk. Think about your life now, at this exact moment. You have a smartphone in your hand, right? That means you have access to more information than any king of antiquity ever had. Do you have internet? Then you can learn practically any skill for free. You can take courses on YouTube about programming, design, digital marketing, cooking, languages. But how many people stay there, scrolling through the infinite feed of social networks, complaining that they don't have opportunities? Do you have health to walk? Then you can start exercising today. Without paying for an expensive gym, there are free apps like Nike Training Club, FitOn, or you can simply walk in the park. Do you have some knowledge or skill? You can start teaching others on Instagram, TikTok, create a small side business. God sustained me until here was unt, so you could stand still, waiting for everything to fall from the sky ready. It was for you to use what you already have as a starting point. That little, that seems insignificant. It's the seed of the much that you so desire. But what really happens with most people? They live in a kind of trance, hypnotized by the culture of when I have more money, I'll start investing. When I have more time, I'll take care of my health. When I have a better job, I'll be more dedicated. When everything seemed lost in many people's lives, it was unto a gigantic external change that saved them. It was the decision to start taking better care of what already existed. It's like that real story of the guy who was unemployed and, instead of just sending resumes, started making videos on YouTube teaching what he knew about Excel. He started with 0 subscribers, with an old cell phone, recording in a messy room. Today he has thousands of students and an income better than many formal jobs. Or that woman who, instead of complaining about low salary, started making cakes at home on weekends. She started selling to neighbors, then to friends of friends, then created an Instagram. 3 years later, she quit her job and today has her own bakery. The secret: she didn't wait to have the perfect industrial kitchen. She started with what she had: a simple stove and an old mixer. And here's the point that will connect all this with something even deeper. When you do unvalue what you have, you send a silent message to the universe, to God, to life, whatever you want to call it. You say without words that you're not ready to receive more. It's like giving an iPhone to a 3-year-old child. They won't know how to use it, will probably break it or lose it. It's not because the child is bad, it's because they don't yet have the maturity for that. God saw your pain. He knows you want more, that you dream big, that you have giant plans. But He also sees if you're taking care of the small things He's already entrusted to you. That relationship you neglect, that work you do halfway, that health you ignore, that gift you buried out of fear or laziness. Each thing you have is a test, not a test to punish you, but a test to prepare you. And the question that lingers in the air, echoing in the silence of your conscience, is this: are you passing the test of the little to be able to receive approval for the much? The teaching of Jesus through parables and their depth, Jesus had a unique way of teaching, a wisdom that crosses millennia and continues to make sense today. In 2026, He didn't arrive with complicated speeches full of theological terms that only scholars would understand. No, He used simple stories from the daily life of common people, stories about farmers, fishermen, merchants, families. And why did He do this? Because the deepest truths of life don't need elaborate language to be understood. They need open hearts to be received. When God speaks to the heart through these parables, He's not just transmitting information, He's planting seeds of transformation. It's like when you listen to a song and suddenly a phrase hits you in a way you can't even explain. It's not just about understanding the words, it's about feeling the truth behind them. Jesus knew that the mind easily forgets abstract concepts, but the heart never forgets a good story. And that's exactly why, 2,000 years later, we're still here talking about what He taught through these powerful narratives. The interesting thing is that Jesus' parables work in layers, like those songs that every time you listen to, you discover something new. On the surface, you have a simple story that anyone can follow, but the deeper you dive, the more depth you find. It's like watching a movie like Christopher Nolan's Inception. The first time you understand the basic story, but each time you re-watch, you notice details, symbolisms, connections you hadn't caught before. The parables are like that. A child can listen and extract a valuable lesson, but a theologian can study the same parable their whole life and continue discovering new meanings. Faith in Jesus Christ is not just believing that He existed or that He was a good teacher, it's diving into this transformative wisdom that He left. And here's something many people don't realize. Jesus didn't speak just to speak. Every word was chosen with purpose. Every story had multiple applications. He wasn't just passing time with the crowds. He was encoding eternal truths in formats that would resist the test of time and cultures. Let's better understand how this works in practice. Take the parable of the prodigal son. For example, that story of the son who takes his inheritance, spends everything on parties, and returns home ashamed. You can look at this story from at least 5 different angles, and they all make sense. First angle, it's about repentance and forgiveness. Second angle, it's about pride and humility. Third angle, it's about the unconditional nature of God's love. Fourth angle, it's about the older brother who gets angry, representing religious legalism. Fifth angle, it's about wasting resources and learning from consequences. 5 different people can read the same parable, and each will extract exactly what they need at that moment in life. God heard your prayer when you asked for direction, for clarity, for understanding, and maybe the answer is hidden in one of these ancient stories you've heard 1,000 times, but never really understood. It's like those classic books like Dom Casmurro or Grande Citaio Veradas that you read in school and didn't understand anything, but when you reread years later with more life experience, it suddenly all makes sense. Now, there's a super important technical detail about parables that most people ignore. Jesus didn't explain all of them. That's right, many times he would tell the story and leave it at that, without giving that chewed-up conclusion we love so much. And the disciples would be confused, would go ask later, and even then he would give answers that generated more questions. Why? Because Jesus knew something that the best educators today are rediscovering now. When you give the ready answer, the person doesn't really learn, they just temporarily memorize. But when you make the person think, question, search, that's when deep learning happens. It's the difference between memorizing math formulas for a test and really understanding the concepts. In the first case, you forget in a week. In the second, you carry it for life. You are not alone. God is with you on this journey of discovery, but He won't do the work of thinking for you. He gives you the tools, the clues, the maps, but you need to walk, explore, make an effort to get there. And there's more. When you yourself discover a truth, it becomes your truth. It integrates into your identity in a way that no memorized sermon could do. But here is something that will blow your mind. Jesus' parables aren't just talk about moral behavior or religious rules. They reveal universal principles of how life works. They're like spiritual laws, as real as the law of gravity. Take the parable of the sower. For example, the one where seeds fall on different types of soil and generate different results. Jesus was teaching content marketing 2,000 years before the internet existed. Seriously, think with me, you can have the best message in the world, but if you spread it on the wrong soil, it won't yield results. It's like trying to sell long-term investments to someone who's desperate for money today, or trying to teach advanced programming techniques to someone who doesn't yet understand basic logic. Heaven is silent, but God is acting, preparing you to understand these truths at the right time. Tears that God sees are not wasted. Each frustration, each time you tried something, and it didn't work, was preparing you, molding you, transforming you into the type of soil that can receive and multiply the right seeds. And when you start to understand these deep principles hidden in simple parables, your whole life starts to make more sense. The successes, the failures, the waiting times, everything gains a greater purpose. The parable of the talents, Matthew 25. The distribution and the servant's choices. This parable begins in a way that already makes you stop to think. A rich man decides to travel and, before leaving, calls his servants to an important meeting. It wasn't just any trip. It was one of those long ones, without a set date to return. And then he does something interesting. Instead of leaving everything locked in the safe or under the watch of a general administrator, he distributes his goods among 3 servants. But here's the detail that changes everything. He doesn't divide equally. To one he gives 5 talents, to another 2 talents, to the third only 1 talent, and the Bible makes the criterion clear: each received according to their ability. This already breaks that myth that God treats everyone exactly the same. No, He is just, but justice is not blind equality. It's giving each person according to their measure, according to what they can carry, according to the preparation they've demonstrated. When God speaks to the heart of each person, He knows exactly what their capacity is, what their limits are, their potentials, their hidden fears. It is like a teacher who deeply knows each student. They woe on give the same exercise to the beginner and the advanced, because that would be unfair to both sides. Now, let's get inside the heads of these 3 servants, because that's where it gets interesting. The first guy receives 5 talents, and just so you have an idea, a talent at that time was an enormous amount of money, like about 20 years of salary of a common worker. So imagine receiving 5 times that. This servant could have thought, wow, it's a lot of responsibility. I'd better keep everything carefully so I don't lose anything. But no, he was different. He looked at those 5 talents and saw possibility, saw opportunity, saw trust, and more importantly, saw work to be done. He didn't sit admiring the money. He went out to work, to invest, to make it yield. The text doesn't detail exactly what he did, but you can imagine maybe he bought merchandise and resold it at a profit, maybe. He invested in some business lent with fair interest, who knows, maybe even expanded the boss's business. The point is, he acted. God sustained me, he thought, not so I could be mediocre with what I received, but so I could honor this trust by multiplying everything. And he managed to double it. 5 became 10. It wasn't luck, it was work, it was vision, it was courage to risk. The second servant received 2 talents and, man, this one impresses me in a special way. Why? Because he could easily have gotten into toxic comparison. He could have looked at the other servant who received 5 and thought, I received less because I'm less important, because he's worth more, because they don't trust me as much. This is the trap that catches many people nowadays: comparison. You look to the side and see that guy who received more opportunities, more resources, a structured family, better education, and you start feeling wronged. But this second servant didn't fall for that. He didn't waste time looking at what the other had. He focused on what he had. 2 talents. Fine, I'll do my best with these 2. And guess what? He also doubled what he received to become 4. Percentage-wise, he had the same success as the first. And this reveals a powerful truth. God doesn't compare you with anyone. He evaluates what you did with what you received. Faith in Jesus Christ is also trusting that what He gave you is exactly what you need to fulfill your purpose. Not more, not less. It's like those inspirational stories you see out there. There are people who were born poor, studied in public school, had no connections, but took advantage of every opportunity that appeared. Took free technical courses at SINAC, learned English on YouTube with channels like English in Brazil or Karina Fragoso, got online certifications on Coursera or Google Education, and today are better off than many rich kids who were born with everything. The question was never how much you have, it was always what you do with what you have. Then comes the third servant, and this is where the story gets heavy. This guy received 1 talent. Just one, and I imagine what must have gone through his head. While the other 2 ran off excited to work, this one must have felt undervalued, belittled. 1 talent. That's it. Why should I make an effort if it's so little? And then comes fear, that silent enemy that paralyzes more people than anything else. He thought, what if I try to invest and lose everything? What if I can't multiply like the others? Better not risk it. So he did the safest thing possible, dug a hole in the ground and buried the talent. Kept it there, protected, untouched, unused. You are not alone. God is with you, but He won't make your choices for you. This servant had all the same opportunities as the others, had time, had a valuable talent, had the boss's trust. But he let fear win, and you know what's saddest? He probably even felt virtuous, like, look how careful I am. I won't waste my master's money. I'll keep it safe. But care is not the same as wisdom, and excessive protection can be a prison. It's like that guy who is so afraid of being betrayed that he never allows himself to truly love. Or that person who is so afraid of failing that they never try anything new. In the end, life passes and they never really lived. Meanwhile, time passed. Days became weeks, weeks became months, months became years. The boss didn't return, and each servant continued their choice. The first 2 kept working, reinvesting, growing their results. They probably faced challenges, bad markets, businesses that didn't work out, attempts that failed. But they kept trying, adjusting, learning. As for the third servant, each day that passed, he became more convinced he had made the right choice. See, good thing I kept it. Good thing I didn't risk it. He confused inertia with prudence, fear with wisdom. And here's a brutal lesson about life. Often, the consequence of our choices doesn't appear immediately. You can be making terrible decisions today, and for months or even years, it seems everything is fine. It's like the person who eats poorly, doesn't exercise, sleeps little. For a while, it seems there's no problem, until suddenly diseases appear, the body demands payment. Or that guy who doesn't invest in the relationship thinks everything is normal until one day his wife asks for divorce and he's shocked, not understanding that it was being built silently over years of negligence. God acts in silence, building consequences, preparing harvests both of good seeds and bad ones. And these three servants were, each one, walking toward the day they would have to account for their choices. The return of the master and the accounting. After a long time, the master returned, and this expression, long time, isn't there by accident. You know, it carries weight, tension. Imagine the scene. Years passed, life continued, routines were established, and suddenly, on any given day, he appears. He didn't warn beforehand, didn't send a message saying, "I'm coming back next week, get ready." No, he simply arrived and then begins the moment of truth. That moment when you can't pretend anymore, can't stall anymore, can't postpone anymore. It's like those life situations you know will come, but always push with your belly. The job interview you scheduled, the difficult conversation you need to have with someone, the medical exam result, the project presentation. You know it will happen, but while it doesn't happen, you can kind of live on autopilot in the comfort zone. But when the time comes, it really comes, and there's no way to escape. When God speaks to the heart in that moment of accounting, it's no longer about promises. It's no longer about intentions. It's about concrete results. What did you do with what you received? And each of the three servants had to face this question head-on. The first servant arrived confident and had reason for it. He didn't need to invent excuses, didn't need to beautify the story, didn't need to blame the economy, luck, or circumstances. He simply presented the facts. "Master, you gave me 5 talents. Look here, I worked with them, and here are 5 more I gained. 10 talents in total, doubled the investment." And the boss's response was short, direct and transformative. "Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master." Pay attention to this response because it reveals principles that work in any area of life. First, he was called good and faithful, not just competent or successful. Goodness and faithfulness come before performance. Second, you were faithful over a little weight. 5 talents were little. In the owner's perspective, yes, it was a test. Third, the reward wasn't just a pat on the back, it was promotion. I will set you over much more responsibility, more authority, more opportunities. That's how it works, people. You prove you can take care of the small business. They give you the bigger branch. You prove you're reliable in the junior position. They promote you to management. God sustained me until here, this servant thought, and will continue sustaining me at higher levels because I honored what he placed in my hands. It's like those real stories of entrepreneurs who started as interns. There's the case of Michael Duke, who started loading boxes at Walmart and became CEO of the company. Or Brazilian Abilio Diniz, who started working in his father's bakery and transformed that into the Pão de Açúcar empire. Progression always starts with faithfulness in the small. Right after came the second servant, and the scene was practically identical. Master, you gave me 2 talents. I worked and gained 2 more. Here are 4. And guess what the boss's response was? Exactly the same. Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. Wait a minute. The response was the same. But one multiplied 5 and the other multiplied 2. Shouldn't there be a difference? And this is where you understand something profound about how God evaluates things. He's not comparing you with other people. He's evaluating what you did with what you received. Both doubled the investment. Both were faithful. Both worked diligently. So both received the same recognition. This completely destroys that toxic competition mentality that our society keeps pushing down our throats. It's not about being better than others, it's about being faithful with your own journey. Faith in Jesus Christ is also this, trusting that you don't need to have the same story, the same resources, the same results as another person to be approved by God. You are not alone. God is with you in your race, not in anyone else's race. It's like marathon versus relay race. In a marathon, each runs their pace. Each has their strategy. And the important thing is you finish your course in the best way possible, not necessarily arrive in first place overall. There are people who will run the 42 kilometers in 3 hours. There are people who will take 6 hours. But if both gave their best within their capacities, both won. Then came the most tense moment of the parable, the third servant's turn, and you can feel the energy changing, right? The first 2 were quick, direct, confident. This one probably took time to approach, maybe even tried to wait for the others to leave first. And when he finally had to speak, look what came out of his mouth. Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. Man, there are so many things wrong with this speech that we need to unpack carefully. First, he started by accusing the boss. You're harsh, you're tough, you demand too much. See the strategy. When we fail, the first instinct is to blame someone or something external. It's the economy, it's the family, it's lack of luck, it's God who's too demanding. Second, I was afraid. At least he admitted it. Right, but admitting fear doesn't justify having let fear win. Everyone has fear. The question is what you do even with fear. Third, here you have what is yours. He returned exactly what he received, as if that were a victory, as if not having lost were enough. But in God's economy, in life's economy, there's no such thing as maintaining what you have indefinitely. Either you grow or you wither. Either you advance or you retreat. Neutral doesn't exist. God heard your prayer asking for wisdom, but wisdom without action is illusion. Tears that God sees include the tears of late repentance, when the person realizes they wasted time, opportunities, potential, all out of fear of trying. And then came the master's response, and it was harsh, it was direct, it was unfiltered. "You wicked and slothful servant." It wasn't fearful servant, it wasn't too careful servant, it was wicked and slothful servant. Wicked, because his distorted view of the boss revealed a distorted heart. Slothful, because he completely ignored the responsibility he had received. And the boss continues, "You knew that I reap where I have not sown, and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest." Translating, if you were so afraid to risk, why didn't you at least do the minimum? Why didn't you put it in savings, in a safe investment, something that would at least yield a little? Because the truth is, he didn't just have fear of losing, he had laziness to try. Fear was the excuse, but the root was negligence indeed. When everything seemed lost in this servant's life, and look, seemed in quotes, because in his head everything was controlled. Everything safe, he didn't realize he was actually wasting everything. And then came the final sentence, "Take the talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents. The little he had was taken and given to the one who already had much. And Jesus closes with that phrase that seems unfair at first glance. But that is actually a spiritual and natural law. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. The strongest lesson, the servant who hid out of fear the condemnation of the third servant, is one of the most misunderstood and at the same time most necessary passages in the entire Bible. Many people read it and think, wow, how unfair. The guy didn't steal, didn't spend the money on parties, didn't lose anything. He just returned exactly what he received. Why was he so punished? And it's exactly this reaction that shows how our mentality needs to be transformed. Because in God's perspective, in the perspective of real life, doing nothing with what you have is as serious as actively wasting. It's like that person who has perfect health but never leaves the couch, never exercises, never takes advantage of the body that works in 20 years. When health is no longer there, they will bitterly regret not having used it while they could. Or that young person who has energy, time, and their whole life ahead, but spends years playing video games 10 hours a day without studying, without developing skills, without building anything. When they reach 35, 40 years old and look back, they'll realize they buried their youth in a virtual hole. Heaven is silent, but God is acting, and sometimes He acts precisely by removing from you what you refused to use. Because leaving it in the hands of those who don't value it is cosmic waste. Let's dive deeper into this concept of paralyzing fear, because this is where the real danger lies. The servant didn't say, "I didn't want to." He said, "I was afraid." And fear, let's face it, is something everyone feels. Fear of failing, fear of disappointing, fear of losing what you have, fear of others' judgment, fear of not being enough. These fears are human, they're understandable, they're even expected. But here's the difference between people who advance in life and people who remain stagnant. Those who advance feel the fear and act anyway. Those who stagnate let fear make decisions for them. There's a fantastic book called Mindset: The New Psychology of Success by Carol Dweck, a psychologist at Stanford, that explains this brilliantly. She talks about fixed mindset versus growth mindset. The fixed mindset says, "I can't fail, so it's better not even to try." The growth mindset says, "I can fail, and that will teach me something valuable." The third servant had a fixed mindset for him. Not trying was safer than trying and possibly failing. When God speaks to the heart about leaving the comfort zone, He's not asking you to be irresponsible or imprudent. He's asking you to trust that the process of trying, even if it includes mistakes, is infinitely more valuable than the paralysis of fear. God sustained me in every attempt, in every fall, in every new beginning, not just in successes. But there's an even deeper layer to this story that most people never notice. The servant didn't just have fear of losing the talent, he had a distorted view of the boss himself. Remember what he said: "I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow." In other words, in his head, the boss was unfair, was harsh, was cruel. And when you have a distorted image of God, because yes, the boss here represents God, you can't trust. You live in fear, always thinking he's waiting for you to fail to punish you, always thinking that nothing you do is enough. And then you become paralyzed. It's like having a father you think will only criticize you no matter what you do. In the end, you stop trying anything, because what's the point? But look at the irony. The first two servants didn't have this view. They saw the boss as someone who trusted them, who believed in them, who gave opportunities. And this difference in perspective changed everything. Two servants looked at the same boss and saw trust. One looked and saw threat. Faith in Jesus Christ is, to a large extent, having the correct perspective on who He is. Not a celestial tyrant waiting for you to slip, but a Father who gave you exactly what you need to grow and wants to see you prosper. You are not alone. God is with you, rooting for your success, not setting traps for your failure. Now, let's talk about what really happened when the talent was taken from him. Because this part of the parable bothers a lot of people. Take it from him and give it to the one who has 10. It seems unfair, right? The rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. But look at what is actually happening here. This is not about material wealth. It's about demonstrated capacity. The one with 10 proved he could multiply resources. The one with 0 proved he would bury resources. So, where does it make more sense to place resources, where they will grow or where they will sit idle? It's that simple. In real life, this happens all the time, and you barely notice. You know that employee who always delivers more than expected, always volunteers for new projects, always seeks to learn more. That person receives more opportunities, more responsibilities, more promotions. Meanwhile, the one who does only the bare minimum, who never takes risks, who always has excuses, that person stagnates and may even lose what they have when restructuring comes. Or think about investing. You have $1,000 to invest. You have two friends. One has already turned 5,000 into 50,000 over the years through smart investments. The other hid 10,000 under the mattress out of fear of losing it. Who do you ask for advice? Who do you trust with your money? Obviously, God saw your pain when you tried and failed, but He also saw your courage to try. And between those who try and fail and those who never try at all, He will always invest more in those who try. The strongest lesson of this entire parable is this: God does not multiply what you hide, He multiplies what you use. It doesn't matter how little you think you have if you use it faithfully, courageously, and diligently, it will grow. But if you bury it out of fear, laziness, or the belief that it's not enough, it will wither, rot, and be taken from you. And think about the tragedy of that. How many people live their entire lives without ever discovering their true potential because they were afraid to try? How many books were never written because someone thought they weren't good enough? How many businesses were never created because someone feared failure? How many relationships never happened because someone feared rejection? How many artistic, scientific, and entrepreneurial talents died buried in some cemetery, wasted and unused? It breaks the heart. God heard your prayer asking for purpose, meaning, and to make a difference in the world. But what if the answer isn't Him giving you something new and grand, but showing you that you already have what you need? You're just afraid to use it. The tears God sees include the tears of unrealized potential, of the could have been that never was. And the chilling but necessary question that echoes at the end of this lesson is this: when you reach the end of your life and look back, will you regret the things you tried that didn't work out, or the things you never tried because you were afraid? Because the answer to that question will define how you live from here on. Deep reflection, spiritual responsibility, and valuing the little. This parable is not about comparison, it never was. It's about something far deeper and more personal. Spiritual responsibility. And what does that mean? It means you will be held accountable not for what others did with their lives, but for what you did with yours. It means God will not ask, "Why won't you like so and so?" but rather, "What did you do with what I gave you?" That's a brutal difference because it removes every cheap excuse of comparison and justification. Oh, but they had more opportunities, were born into a wealthy family, had a better education. That may be true, but so what? It doesn't change your responsibility for what you have. When God speaks to your heart about responsibility, He is not being cruel or overly demanding. He is simply reminding you of a universal principle. Everything you have is, in fact, borrowed. Your life, your time, your talents, your opportunities, your relationships, everything. You own nothing. You are a temporary steward, and like every steward, you will have to show what you did with what was entrusted to you. When this awareness truly sinks in, it completely changes how you live each day. Let's talk about a truth no one likes to hear, but that can transform your life. Maybe you think you have little, but the real problem isn't how much you have, it's how much you value what you have. There are people living in countries with clean water coming out of the tap, something billions of people haven't. They complain that the water isn't cold enough. People with free access to education on the internet, entire libraries of knowledge, one click aways the same device. 2. Spend hours watching celebrity gossip. People with full health, functioning bodies, intact limbs, live sedentary lives, stuffing themselves with junk food, slowly destroying the incredible machine that is the human body. People with loving families and true friends stay so busy, so distracted, so focused on what they don't have, that they completely neglect these blessings. Time passes, and when they finally stop to look, they've already lost so much. The father has died, and that important conversation never happened. The children have grown up, and the formative years were missed. Health is gone and doesn't come back. God sustains you by giving you exactly what you need now, but if you don't recognize it, thank Him for it and care for it. He has no way to give you more, not because He is stingy, but because you're not ready. It's like giving a car to someone who doesn't know how to drive, not giving it isn't punishment. It's protection. Faith in Jesus Christ is also trusting that what you have today, as small as it may seem, is enough to begin. Practical application for life. Now it's time to stop philosophizing and move into concrete action, because theory without practice transforms nothing. Jesus asks you a question today, here and now, as you read or hear this. What are you hiding out of fear? Don't answer automatically. Stop, breathe, and really think. What talent did you bury? Maybe it's your gift for writing that you never shared because no one will read it anyway. Maybe it's your skill with numbers that you ignore because you think accounting is boring. Maybe it's your ease with people that you waste by isolating yourself. Maybe it's that business idea that keeps knocking in your mind, but you always find an excuse not to start. Maybe it's a relationship you know needs fixing, but you keep postponing the hard conversation. Maybe it's a habit change you know you need, but you always leave it for Monday, when God speaks to your heart about buried talents. It's not to paralyze you with guilt, it's to wake you up to transformative action. Every day that talent stays buried is a lost day, wasted potential, a better version of you that will never exist if you do nothing. And what opportunity have you failed to value? This hurts, but it must be said, sometimes we so obsessed with asking for new opportunities that we notice the ones that already passed us by. That free course you saw but didn't take because you didn't have time. You had time. You just didn't prioritize it. That job opening you didn't apply for because you thought you weren't qualified. In recruiters decide that. not you. That person who showed interest in being your friend, but you were distant because you were too busy with yourself. That side project you started excitedly, but abandoned at the first difficulty. That advice from someone more experienced that you ignored because you thought you knew better. Do you know what all these situations have in common? They don't come back. Opportunity is like a train, it passes. You either catch it or miss it, but it doesn't reverse to pick up those left on the platform. God sustains you by giving you chances, opening doors, placing people in your path, creating windows of possibility. But if you don't step through, if you don't act, if you stand there analyzing until the door closes, you can't later complain that you never have opportunities. You just don't value them when they appear. Faith in Jesus Christ without works is dead, the Bible says. And works without valuing the opportunities God places before you are just motion without direction. Here's a practical exercise you can do today, not tomorrow, not next week, today. Take a piece of paper or open the Notes app on your phone and make 3 lists. 1. Talents I have but don't use. 2. Resources I have but don't value. 3. Small actions I can start this week. Keep the actions small and realistic. You are not alone. God is with you in this process. But He will not move the mouse for you, open the exercise app for you, or make the call for you. He gives you the strength, the capacity, the opportunity, but you must take the step. Maybe the miracle you're waiting for begins exactly when you thank God for, use and honor what you already have. Read that again slowly. The miracle doesn't come before you value what you have. It comes when you value it. God heard your prayer, but sometimes the answer isn't a bolt of lightning from heaven. Sometimes it's a quiet whisper saying, use what you already have. So here is the final, defining question. From now on, what will you do differently? If you got this far, felt something, agreed in your mind, but changed nothing in your routine, then this was just entertainment. But if you truly understood the parable, something must change, small at first, but real, concrete, and starting today. Will you continue to be the servant who buries out of fear, or the one who multiplies with courage? Will you keep waiting for the perfect talent to fall from heaven, or will you start working with the one talent already in your hand? The choice has always been yours, and the time to choose is now.